In one instance, we see Peter Parker in his beta male era, letting everyone take control of him. This is soon turned around as he becomes a Sigma, using the symbiote to change his life. Okay, I can't keep talking like this. Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 are perfect opposites. And no, not in the sense that Part 2 is seen as one of the most beloved superhero films of all time and being my favorite movie of all time, while Spider-Man 3 is a little less beloved. Some hate it. No joke, I used to see on some websites that Spider-Man 3 is in their top 50 worst movies of all time. Man, no wonder Raimi stopped making movies for a while. Like, come on now, I don't think 3 is that bad. Hell, I don't even think it's bad at all. It's pretty good, just not as good as the first two. But these movies are perfect opposites in how the characters act, the positions in the stories, and the relationships between the characters. So, without further ado, you feeling low on your aura? Well, get on with your aura! Blazing aura, Blora, and here's why Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 are perfect opposites. Let's start off with our main hero, Peter Parker. With the first movie showing Peter having his life take a change when he has to learn the responsibility of being Spider-Man. And where do we go from there? Well, the most obvious opposite people know of the sequels is Peter's life at the start of the films. In Spider-Man 2, we know that one of the things that make people love this movie is that the film constantly tells us that Peter's life sucks. I mean, absolutely dreadful. And this makes Peter more relatable as a person despite him being a superhero, because he has other responsibilities that any other human has. Pay the rent, get his grades up, be at his job, and be there for the ones he loves. But because he can't live his normal life and needs to keep being Spider-Man, he always disappoints the people in his personal life. And life keeps on bashing Peter through so many gags that any human can go through, like it's not even his fault for some of these things.
Over here.
He's nothing to me but an empty seat.
Compare that with Spider-Man 3, where Peter at the start is living his best life. As he says himself, everyone loves him. Or rather, everyone loves Spider-Man. As for Peter, only MJ changes her feelings for him. Spider-Man gets the key to the city, he's about to propose to MJ, barely anyone thinks he's a menace anymore. He always boasts about his personality, and he can finally be there for his girlfriend. Can't wait to see how he screws this up. In Spider-Man 2, life abuses and influences Peter's choices to live normally. But in Spider-Man 3, Peter's choices influence his will to make his life grander. And this all leads into the fact that both movies are opposites in how they display Peter's power. We all know the phrase,
with great power
means that you're responsible for your actions. And from the sequels, we get Peter's power at its lowest and its highest. Perhaps, too high. In Spider-Man 2, with Peter struggling to balance his two lives together, he loses the power to become Spider-Man, ultimately being free of any worries in his mind of being a superhero. Or so he thinks. As days pass by, Peter's doubts slowly grow again as he sees multiple people in danger, with no one to help. He tries to save a girl from a burning building, but fails to save another person. You know who could have saved them? Spider-Man! This scene might be a contrast to the burning building scene from the first movie. Responsibility curses Peter no matter where he goes and how he lives his life. The choice of getting rid of any responsibility from either life he's living will bring massive consequences. It will bring guilt. And when he thinks he knows what he wants, he ends up hurting himself when his powers haven't fully returned. It all stems from Mary Jane. We'll get into that later. The moment we see Peter abuse his powers is in Spider-Man 3, through the one thing that takes advantage of him that makes him take advantage of others. The symbiote. Now, I know this movie is rushed and Sam Raimi didn't intend on making the symbiote a part of the movie. Instead, he wanted to focus on Sandman and potentially Vulture. But even if this was the case, Raimi did a phenomenal job with what he could work with the symbiote into the story. Once Peter knows the amplified power the symbiote gives to him, he uses it to fix all of his problems, by making them worse than usual.
You just gotta believe in yourself and you pull yourself together, you get right back on the horse and...
Don't give me the horse.
You keep your fucking voice down!
For example, in the former, Peter would let himself get hurt by Harry and humiliated in public. With the symbiote though, he insults him and blows half his face off! Oh, that's why it's called Face Off. Peter tries to swing through New York City to not think of his love for Mary Jane? Well, that's when he starts to lose control of his powers. Symbiote? He uses it to confront Mary Jane and ends up physically hurting her. Not only that, but he swings through New York and takes care of criminals in a more ruthless fashion. Because it makes him feel good. Jameson not giving you enough money? Symbiote and show him who's boss. Mr. Dickovich steals your rent? Symbiote and tell him,
"You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!"
Peter's giving cake when he's at his lowest, reassuring him that there are still good moments and people out there during stressful times. Well, with the symbiotes, he asks for more cookies. You're overdoing it, Peter. You're abusing Ursula's cooking skills. You can't take advantage of what life gives to you! Anyways, with no powers, Peter Parker thrives at being Peter Parker for only a short amount of time. And with powers, Peter Parker thrives at being Spider-Man for a short time, until he realizes that he needs to take control of himself. Peter's powers are tied to his responsibility and what he truly wants, his love with MJ. And speaking of MJ, let's talk about another major opposite, the relationship between Peter and MJ. In Spider-Man 2, Peter has trouble confessing his feelings to Mary Jane because he can't be with her. If she were to date Spider-Man, she'd be in danger. And because he's still torn apart on what he wants, throughout the movie he gets ridiculed by even seeing her face. Peter's told that MJ is getting married to Jameson's son, ends up missing her play, sees her face everywhere on posters, and has to take a picture of both of them kissing. In Spider-Man 3, however, Mary Jane is the one that struggles most in the relationship. Peter had struggled with keeping his job, but now MJ is the one getting replaced after seeing poor reviews of her acting. She has to see and hear Peter boast about being Spider-Man and having a great time everywhere, has to work as a waitress, and as an opposite to having Peter witness his crush smooching her husband, MJ has to witness her almost husband smooch his classmates in front of a crowd. John kept appearing when Peter didn't need it, and Gwen kept showing up when she didn't need to. Now, I know a lot of people don't like MJ in the Raimi movies, especially in the sequels, but the only thing I really hate her for is kissing Harry when she was still with Peter. I can kinda understand why she acted like this since Peter was being a narcissistic ding-dong that didn't know how to talk about his feelings without bringing up Spider-Man. It was still petty though, like come on, you could've at least broke up with him before doing this. Plus, I can understand why she'd be mad at him for not showing up to a play after promising, not giving a good excuse, and constantly saying corny lines to try to get with her after she said she was getting married. But with a girl like MJ, you never know, since she does the most insane thing and run away on her wedding day to meet with Peter, even saying herself that he needs someone to save him. And when MJ is at her lowest in Spider-Man 3, who is it to save her from loneliness through forgiveness? None other than Peter Parker. Despite both characters wanting each other yet distancing themselves multiple times, they end up coming to their senses and love each other in the end. And Peter confirms that they're still together in No Way Home. Good for them. It was hard to find an opposite between Doc Ock and the villains in Spider-Man 3, given how there are 3 different villains with some having more screen time than others, but I ended up choosing Doc Ock and Venom as clear opposites of each other. Sandman is probably the least evil villain with how he tries to take care of his daughter and Harry eventually comes to his senses, even with that weird Amnesia plotline. Doc Ock doesn't want to kill Spider-Man. All he wants to do is finish his life's work. He does threaten to hurt some people in the process, but he isn't out for blood. Plus, he's slightly controlled by his octopus arms. Eddie Brock, on the other hand, does want to kill Spider-Man, and even Peter Parker. It's nice seeing how Eddie is a clear opposite with Tobey Spider-Man, but damn, even going far enough to ask Jesus to punish his coworker is insane.
I want you to kill Peter Parker.
Get him, Jesus!
I help those who help themselves!
And Eddie is just some scrawny dude. Actually, yeah, I get it, Eric Foreman, that PNG. You don't need to tell me you're in this movie. In their final battles, Doc Ock is the only Spider-Man villain to not die a monster, next to Harry. You can make an argument for Norman since he was a bit insane, but that's up to you. Peter is able to convince Octavius to shut down the machine, even when his arms try to convince him otherwise, albeit his inhibitor chip was shocked again. Octavius is able to change his mind after being told of Peter's lesson, choice, and he chooses to give up his life's work through ending his own life. Peter gives a lesson to Venom about forgiveness, that revenge will have its consequences. But does Eddie listen? Nope! This guy is a sadistic prick, and even when he's taken out of the symbiote's grasp, his lust for power ends up getting himself killed. Doc dies with acceptance, while Eddie dies a monster that couldn't accept giving up power and revenge. Honestly, I feel kinda bad for Eddie. Like, dude for sure had to be put down, and it's kinda frightening that out of all the villains, a scrawny photographer was the most ruthless out of all the strong men with gadgets. Harry wanted to kill Peter as revenge for his father, but Eddie? He wanted to kill Peter for catching him stealing his pictures and stealing his girlfriend. If that doesn't spell I'm sick in the head, I don't know what else to say. But damn, he didn't need to disintegrate into nothingness for all he's done. That's a brutal way to go out. It is what it is. The final opposite I want to talk about, and probably the funniest, are the scenes where Peter rejects responsibility and takes advantage of responsibility. You know the scenes. After a very heartfelt conversation with Uncle Ben in Spider-Man 2, Peter decides to make a choice and give up his superhero life and live normally. A very impactful scene of Peter freeing himself that adapts issue 50, Spider-Man No More, directly leads into one of the most cheesiest and corniest scenes I've ever watched in any film. Peter Parker being Peter Parker. And you know what's the direct opposite of this? Well, at least in the editor's cut of Spider-Man 3. Peter nearly kills his former best friend, and directly cuts into the infamous emo Peter dance montage. Spider-Man 2 uses ironic humor since you expect the next scene after Uncle Ben to be something to take seriously, but you get the opposite of that. And Spider-Man 3 uses dark humor to show how Peter, after brutally hurting Harry, doesn't take any of the situations he's in seriously. The symbiote is making him full of himself. And the funny thing I noticed is that even with the symbiote, Peter has some women amazed by how he looks and acts, but at the same time, some disgusted and laugh at how much of a dork he looks. And the same goes for Spider-Man 2. Like, some people like how Peter looks and acts, but others think he's just a plain old dork. And even in the beginning of Spider-Man 3, he's still being made fun of by his classmates. It's almost like the symbiote changes Peter, but doesn't fully change everyone's perception of him. How society views Peter is nearly the same. You don't see Jameson bowing down to Peter when he puts his feet on his desk. He just looks confused. It's crazy how people take this intentionally cringy scene as something very serious and why Spider-Man 3 sucks. I'm glad this movie's getting the recognition it deserves. Anyways, that's all the opposites I could find between Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. There's probably more in these films that I just didn't feel the need to talk about or couldn't find. So, what do you think about these opposites? Are there some you found on your own? Comment some, notification bell, and keep that aura blazing. Also, another opposite could be how Peter flips out of danger on this motorcycle, but in Spider-Man 3 he couldn't use his spidey sense for some reason.
Get the fuck out of the way! I can't see! There are cars there, motherfucker!